Okay, I can see all my panelists, and thank you panelists for your time on this important topic. I am sure that all our audience is going to learn from our experience. So I think as Priyal mentioned, all of us are playing a crucial role of a DPO that we mentioned in our interesting times in the interesting era that we are in. One is there is a evolving data protection regulation. At the same time, we see newer and newer chat GPTs are coming, and one is the US side, another thing is China. So more and more data protection, risk that we see. So our role is becoming very interesting, right? So I think the first thing is maybe on our audience behalf, I want to probably ask this question to all my panelists is to maybe just talk about your journey, right? Because DPO is not a role that probably when all of us started our career, we were not really looking into this role, right? And gradually, all of us, picked up this role, right? So this journey is important, right? Whatever we have done before really titled as a DPO, how has been our journey and that how our journey has prepared us for this role, right? So I think this is a common question open for all the panelists. Please go on. Your interesting journey, we are wanting to hear. Who would like to go first? I mean, Priya, would you?
Should be fine. Yeah, sure, perfectly fine. Thanks, Dhiru. I think you rightly highlighted. Nobody in this group or panel knew about privacy aspects before GDPR came into place. I think we all started from somewhere 2016, end of the 2016, not even the initial time of it. But how we have all reached out to this stages, I was handling compliance from long. Was part of various compliance aspects in my previous organizations. And the essential part is understanding risk management. If you're part of compliance, you really understand what are the risks associated. Once you understand what are the risks associated, you understand how to mitigate them. And essentially, when we talk about privacy, and especially when GDPR came into picture, it was all about, end of the day, identifying risk and kind of catering to those risks based on whatever risk management framework we had created. So to just sum it up, I think for me, when I started on this journey, it was still not that difficult because already was part of compliance, risk, and we were looking various kind of audit, internal, external compliance certifications, which where risk management is an integral part of it. And that's how you step by step proceed onto it. So when GDPR came into picture, same risk management applied in there, and that's how we took it further. Yeah.
Yeah. And you rightly said, Priya, I mean, ultimately, the goal is to de-risk our organization, right? So earlier, your journey has been to de-risk the organization, maybe from a process, compliances, and security kind of a risk, and then picking up another role. How do you de-risk your organization from a data
Absolutely.
protection?
Absolutely.
So quite interesting. Maybe Akanksha, you can talk about your journey, how you
Sure.
ended this role.
I think most of us is going to be similar, right? Like Priya said that she was handling compliance from long. I had the opportunity of setting up the legal function in my present organization. So, right from scratch, I was collecting, how an IP strategy should look like, to what are the compliances that apply, to how the contracts have to be structured, etc., which eventually led me to evaluate privacy in particular because of the kind of domain I was attached to. It's health tech, we're catering to the hospitals, so there's a lot of PHI involved. So gradually first structuring the privacy better, the privacy policies, etc., better, to having internal awarenesses about how that uh, policy has to be complied with, to extending that compliance to various other acts, frameworks, information security, etc., is how I eventually, became the DPO for all the entities for Ogneto.
Okay, interesting. So I think you took a different path. While I see Priya took a path from a compliance side, I think you were more from a legal background and understand more laws and regulations and how do you really make compliant to that. So quite interesting. I can see the of course we have some history and all of these experiences finally add up that how do we play the role of a DPO, right? And both the skills are important. We'll come to that. But before that, I think Sandesh would like to know how has been your journey. When did you started playing this role? I think that's another important thing. When did you started playing this DPO role? How long you have been playing this role?
Yeah, I started playing this role as a DPO per se almost 4.5 years back. So it's close to 5 years.
Okay.
And before that, I used to practice independently,
Oh.
like as a legal, as a cyber lawyer. So when I started
Oh.
my career, I started it's with purely technology. Okay. And when I say technology, it's a networking and then cyber security. And much before networking, like by qualification, I'm aircraft communication engineer. So I started
Oh.
my career with the aviation industry and configuring the SATCOM, the radio communication, the routers, the switches, the firewall, the VSATs, all the configuration for the data
Mm-hmm.
to traverse and transfers from one end to B end. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
though we hear the privacy as a terminology from the GDPR perspective, but we were applying various measures. For example, when I was working as a network engineer for technology industry, which were setting up BPOs and KPOs. At that time, in order to keep the PI data or private data secure, we didn't used to inform the onshore person that your data is
Mm-hmm.
traversing all the way across the borders to the India. Like, then there are few measures we have to takes place. Like, there was not
Mm-hmm.
direct call which used to land up on a customer's help desk, or there was a kind of ODC kind of a environment where apart from total cyber security, it was a kind of cultural security also. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the customer executives used to put up the fake name so that the customer whoever is calling up to resolve his credit card issues or his banking issue, they shouldn't get to know the real name of the person. So there we used to apply the kind of identifying, hide your identity, these kind of measures.
Okay.
And I started my journey with that, and then as Priya and Akanksha had said, it has traversed through various domains. Like I used to do a GRC. I used to do ISO audit,
Mm-hmm.
the SOC audit, the BS 7799 audit. So while doing audit,
Mm-hmm.
I used to cater how your data should be secure, or what are the measures which you should apply to your data. And then I started working as an independent legal professional. Then what are the laws which you should abide to? There are various countries'
Yes.
laws, and what is the
Okay.
interpretation of those laws goes, or the
Mm-hmm.
overlapping of the laws, like European AI Act, our labor laws, our taxation laws, our financial laws, how those are got interconnected with our data privacy laws. So my journey
Okay.
has went through
So, I
all
mean,
these different
starting from
domains.
hardcore aerospace to technology networking to actually regulation and compliance,
Yes,
quite a
yes,
journey,
that's right.
Sandesh. I would, I think among three of the panelists that we have, I can see the difference, right? Somebody coming from a legal, from a pure compliances to hardcore technology, right? So I think my inference would be that, how do you start what you have done as your graduation? You could be a hardcore technical, you could be a lawyer, you can still end up playing this role of a DPO. What is needed is to understand how do you apply the data protection, rules and regulation in your work in a scenario by scenarios. I think that application is more important than how you begin your journey. Could be legal, could be technical, could be compliances, right? So quite interesting, I think. Very, very, very insightful. Because this is always a question when you want to pick up a role. You first think that, do you have the right background, right education to pick up that role, right? Many times we have this question apprehension in our mind. Oh, I'm not an engineer. Would I be a good person to take up this DPO role? Oh, this is a law. So do I need to be lawyer to take up this role? So I think there's no barrier, that's what probably I would like to inference, that there's no barrier to that what you have been doing so far. If you pick up that skill and you start applying that skill, you can still be a DPO to a big organization, big global organization, play a very big role there, right? So thank you, panelists, for talking about your journey. Quite interesting one. And coming to the same thread that we all are coming from a different background. So maybe Akanksha, I'll come to you first. I mean, how do you think, being a legal person, right, and talking about DPO, which talks about, in a different technological processing that is happening, right? So how would you, and is it ever been any restrictions to you that being a legal person, you do not understand the technology, and probably you would like to have some technical skills with you so that you can question them better, you can do a DPIA better. So what is your feedback on that, or maybe what is your experience on that?
So, Neeru, very interesting question. Initially, I did face the challenge of reading into technology. I knew the law.
Yes.
I always knew the law,
Hmm.
right? Because I was a lawyer, so I was able to interpret and understand how it should be. But my discussions with tech team sometimes went over my head. I wasn't sure if they are
Yes.
compliant or not, and that is very concerning for a position like a DPO, because they can make a fool out of me. I would not know
Yes.
what they're talking about. So I think what really helped me figure all of this out, more than the technical terminology that is likely to change, right? Even if I shift an industry. Like now, for example, I'm now well aware of the terminology being used on the health tech side. Tomorrow, if I move to
Hmm.
another industry, I might have to learn new
Hmm.
terminologies,
New terminology.
which is still okay, but something that really helped me along to ensure and to better monitor the compliances that comes with the aspect of privacy is information security. Because I feel that, it helps you draw the guardrails. It helps you, keep track of every aspect that you should be very closely monitoring. And then ultimately, if you deep dive into what are the applicable laws, and if controls are in place to ensure compliances with applicable data protection laws, and that is
Hmm.
where the foundation of your privacy frameworks or compliance framework within the organization rests. And if that's sorted, then I think most of your
Yes.
job is done. Rest of it
Yeah.
becomes easier. But yes, integrating it with ISO really helped me out. I went ahead and did the lead implementer for ISO 27001. I even did
Hmm.
42001 to sort of understand AI better, although I was aware of the terminology and how my organization
Hmm.
was working. But I think these aspects sort of help us better to understand what is ongoing in the market, what
Yes.
are the other regulations that might apply to us, and how are other people doing it. Because this in itself is a very new trend setting kind of a stage where not everybody is aware of what is going to happen next. There are more
Absolutely. Yes.
anticipations, discussion, talks, and
Yes.
how you can learn from those, how you can implement, how you can
Yes.
learn from somebody else who's already implemented something, right? So attending
Yes.
sessions, talking to people,
Yes.
understanding what sort of frameworks they are trying to build, and see if that helps you out, or even if it doesn't, it's always
Yes. Yes.
insightful to figure these things out.
Yeah. So I think it's not becoming a DPO. I think it's an ongoing journey to be a DPO, to always acquire more and more skill, right? It's not like one time you become a DPO, so it's like you achieve the nirvana and nothing is needed, right? So I think it's continuously working on yourself, right? So more and more standard of ISO will keep coming, the technology keep evolving, and one, I mean, being a DPO, you cannot be master of everything, you can't be master of all the legal aspect of it, all the technological aspect of it. And I think here, I think you, as you rightly said, taking help from the infosec team to do, maybe relying on their, how the infrastructure is secure, what are the parties involved. So I think relying and having those advisory groups, and a close collaboration with those groups is also important to help you, right? Because, now I probably move to Priya, because Priya, I understand she is not from a legal background. So Priya, do you feel that you are lagging behind because, oh, this is a law and you do not maybe understand the implication of the law? You may understand the requirement of a law, but, understanding the implication and the challenges of a law is a little different, which maybe Akanksha could do a better job than somebody who is not a legal background, right? So how do you think that it is not being a compliance person, is it helping you, or do you think, oh, you are lacking something, and how do you really fill up that gap?
Yeah,
If
I think
this
you
any.
already answered that, but I'd like to reiterate
Hmm.
that it is something about one, we don't need to be SME in everything, but at the same time,
Yes.
we need to be of conscious of fact of doing our homework right. What I mean
Hmm.
is, you can't go with very basic questions. At least at our level, we need to kind of get with, I'll say, a question that will kind of be rightly answered and it should make a sense. So the idea is even for legal, in case we are not SMEs, because we don't need to be SMEs, but at the same
Hmm.
time, we need to have that understanding of all the areas of protection, of legality, of regularity, of all these aspects. We should have at least also, if it is level three, out of level three, you
Hmm.
should have a level two understanding. That is clear.
Hmm.
Even level one will not work because you have to take decisions. In case you are
Hmm.
not, you can take a level 3% support and just take an understanding, but decision makers are we. So we don't,
Hmm.
out of, if we say level one, two, three, you need to have level two understanding of legal aspects, protection aspects, and compliance aspect. Then only, and it's not one day job, as you rightly highlighted, it's step by step going into that area. But the idea is if you are going into a data, it is not a first, I want to clarify, I think a lot of people misunderstand it with data privacy officer. It is not data privacy officer. Please, we have to understand. This is data protection officer. When the moment we talk about protection, automatically security takes the major cause here. It's like 18%. If you're protecting something, on top of it, you can put regulatory aspects in there. Perfectly fine. So first, understand what protection word means. How will you get that protection? You should have an understanding on that. How can you safeguard that data, ensure protection? The first, for anybody who wants to be a DPO, they need to understand the protection aspect, then regulatory aspect, and then third is technicality, jurisdiction laws, etc. and etc. But first protection, then regulatory aspect. And third, I like to important point is for DPO role, there is one aspect that we really don't focus on, that is communication skill.
Yes.
That is the most key important aspect for this role because you have to work with legal, you have to work with, there may be a compliance team based on the organization structure, there may be a security team, there will be IT infrastructure team, and at the same time, there will be business and leadership. This role, some or other way, they have to collaborate and coordinate with all of them. So these three, you have to focus and don't forget about the soft skill. It's equally important.
Very well said, Priya. So all of these skills are needed, not just legal and compliance. Even the soft skills are very, very important. Sandesh, coming to you. I mean, you talked about highly technical role, right? So, I mean, do you somewhere feel that having a legal background is important, or how do you really, anything you want to add to what Akanksha and Priya has said, how they are helping playing this role of a DPO?
Yeah. So see, one thing you need to also check out or also mention that where you are playing this role as a DPO. For example, if you are in a multi-service industry or the service industry where there are multiple customers and various
Okay.
jurisdiction, various geographies comes, especially if it's an IT company, something like a
Mm-hmm.
Wipro. So here we are dealing with almost more than 10,000 customers, more than 25,000 vendors and our business partners. So here mix and match of everything comes. Like a technology is the first
Mm-hmm.
thing which you should know that how to protect it, what tools to protect. Even much before technology, I would say technology will come at the last, but even going there, before going there, you should know about something about the philosophy. What is the data privacy philosophy says? It's very ancient terminology. Well, Michael Foucault has already spoke about it. Um, if you read the novel, what is the key takeaway, or if someone want to know the book names, if they want to know more about the privacy, the George Orwell's 1984 is the book which I would really recommend everyone, which has started during our World War. Everything will be watched. So there is a very famous frame, if you will know, the big brother is watching you. Like whatever you are doing, someone is watching you continuously. And is
Yes.
this a good thing to do? Yeah, there are some legal cases also, like very old legal cases where our Supreme Court, of India, has given a judgment that you cannot invade the privacy of a person. Okay, so first of all, you should know the philosophy of it. Then I would say, apart from philosophy, the political science, especially when you are playing a DPO role for larger organizations, then the geopolitical risk. And what, for example, I will give you a small, example of there is one concept, something called as adequate countries. Adequate countries is when European data comes to few countries, the list of countries, you don't have to sign some special kind of agreement. Like you don't have to sign new SCC, you don't have to undergo data privacy impact assessment. Now it has come from where, they have identified few of the developed countries and they have put that up into the adequate countries. But the source of this GDPR or the source of this new SCC has started coming up when there was a person whose name was Shams. He has put up a case against Facebook, against Meta, that my data is there in Facebook, and Facebook is not ready to delete the data, and that's the reason this Shams standard has come, and the new SEC standard has come. Now the actual problem has started between the government like EU and US, and then transatlantic US EU framework has come into the picture. Then you should know the geopolitical risk, which
Yes.
country is stopping data transferring from what countries. Now, entire issue has started from the US, but India is not a part of adequate countries. Like whoever is giving data to India, India has never acted as a threat to any country for stealing of the data or breach of the data. But India's name is not there in the list of those adequate countries. So you should also understand the geopolitical risk. Then comes law, and then comes the technology. This is how, my priorities. I mean, this is
Yes,
not how
yes, yes,
market sees it.
absolutely.
This is
The concept,
yeah. I
the
mean,
foundation is the
yeah, the
concept,
concept
right?
wise.
You need to
So this is
appreciate that
Exactly.
what
and
you are trying to do. Yeah, absolutely. And
exactly,
then the
and this will come
geopolitical
in
thing,
picture.
right? The
Yeah, and this
geopolitical
will come
thing,
in
so
picture.
far, I mean,
Yeah,
in
and this will
2024,
come
we
in
were
picture
talking about
practically.
this DPF. I think
Yeah,
there's some
yeah, yeah.
connection which is breaking, right? Okay.
No, no, we can hear
Is
it.
it
So,
We can hear it. Yeah.
okay, so
yeah, yeah.
Santosh,
Okay.
Sandesh,
Yeah.
so I think very well said. So the first thing is the foundation, right? The understanding of the concept, the deep understanding of the concept, right? Not just understanding GDPR, but what is the history, that how it came into picture, right? How it became the constitutional right, and how different countries are coming together, signing those treaties, and what becomes advocacy decision and what not. And there's a lot of this geopolitical thing which is involved, right? It is not just a law, a lot of geopolitical thing, right? We all are familiar with this spectrum. Then we are familiar with the DPF that happened in 2023. Then we know that now Trump is coming in. Probably we are going to see some challenges to the DPF, right? So very well said. I think all three participants added a very valuable input to this. We have to be a go-to person. What Akanksha said, if you don't have a skill, definitely go and seek the help. What Priya added, you can go and seek the help, but you need to upskill also. You can't be, okay, what you said, okay, I'll do that, because you are the ultimate decision maker. You need to upskill yourself. And Santosh added rightly that your concepts are important, your current affairs are important, that what is happening latest in the geopolitical situation, law and regulation situation, that is also very, very important. That will help you play a DPO role better and better, because the expectation will keep on growing. The complexity of data processing is improving. Earlier it was a SaaS model. It was easy in a traditional SaaS model. Then it becomes all cloud. Another party came into picture. Okay, there's a cloud. What kind of a data is going there? Now with AI coming in, I think there is a multiple layer of orchestration of models, data training, and it becomes even more difficult to understand the data processing. Okay, what is happening at what layer? What kind of a data is going out, who plays what level of role. I think we all DPO understand, even identification of who is controller and processor sometimes become a very, very tedious job to do that, right? So going to the basic is important, seeking help is important, upskilling yourself is very, very important. Okay, quite interesting. I know, I think some questions maybe panelists can side by side, if they are looking into, they can probably help answer those questions. Maybe we can move to the next question. And all of us face challenges, right? Some real time challenges, right? That maybe some new kind of a processing came your way and you were not even aware what is happening and there was a complexity. So maybe give us some real life use case examples that, what are those challenges and how do you address those? How do you overcome those challenges? So maybe anyone, I mean, open for three of the panelists. Anybody would like to go first? Any challenges in your DPO role that you face? Any real time you can give some example of a DPIA, some new vendor onboarding, some new thing that it was a difficult journey for you and how did you overcome that?
I think it's on. There are multiple use cases. Some are legal related.
Every day is a challenge, right, Priya?
Every day is an interesting challenge, learning challenge. I'll put
interesting
it this way.
challenge, never a dull moment for DPO.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. For example, recently I faced that, for example, we are allowed, as per law and as per expectation, we are allowed to send data to the respective area or country. I'll just put it in this way. That is from privacy aspect that, we are allowing and that country's law is also allowing. So let me put it this way. But at the same time, there are security aspects for it, which we know which countries are notorious. So one is giving a clearance from privacy aspect. Okay, yes, in the contract, we agreed that yes, we can transfer data in here. We can have across data can be shared from their organization to our organization, whatever the location it is. But from when we look at the protection aspect, security aspect of it, in the layers of protection, what we have done is we have blocked those country IPs. So one side contractually we said, yeah, we are okay. And all legal signed, it went to us, we signed, great, perfectly fine. Suddenly when the work starts actually one day and they are saying, hey, we are not able to transfer the data. And we are saying we have blocked these because most of the malicious attacks or surface attacks that we face are from these locations and these country IP. So we can't allow. That's a different aspect. We can go for IP whitelisting of customer and all. But what I'm trying to say, even though having a complete understanding that privacy aspect, protection aspect, still sometimes you see it in silos. And then when we go back and we say, hey, you have signed the legal, it did came to you and you kind of signed it and you agreed. Weren't you aware? Because even if there is a delay of one day to customer, it is a loss. It's an escalation that, they couldn't transfer the data that was supposed to come yesterday and it was critical. Yes. From that aspect, then it goes to backtracking where we say, hey, InfoSec has reviewed it or DPO had reviewed it. Then hadn't you considered these aspects at that time? Even though you have the understanding, but sometimes you may able to correlate it immediately, but sometimes you may not be able to correlate. So as I said, there is no clear answer to it. Sometimes they are generic in nature. Sometimes they are too specific to correlate, even though you are aware. So that's why I'm saying it's every day interesting learning.
It's every day. So quite interesting. I mean, that's a quite practical way. I mean, one side is the DPO who is reviewing the DPA, may give a go-ahead for any transfer. But if the InfoSec is not aligned, the group policies are not aligned, so it could be a conflict, right? So very good example, Priya. I mean, if anybody would like to share any challenges, could be anything in their DPO role. Akanksha, would you like to mention something?
I'll take up something. Yeah, nothing as critical as what Priya mentioned, but when my company decided to expand in the GCC region, as a lawyer, I was quite acquainted with the laws and probably wasn't that difficult to see. And most laws in the GCC are much simplified versions of Indian laws, I would say, right? They're not as complicated or as detailed or maybe even confusing as the Indian laws can be. That was the easy part, but where I got stuck was so when you are on ground in Saudi and you meet people, there is so much rigidity and so much strictness about cross-border data transfer that they almost scare you that you can't operate here. We won't let you take the data cross-border and stuff like that. And I in my head know all the law and I'm thinking we are compliant. We have all the, requirements in place, controls in place, a heads up, a transfer impact assessment done, everything done. And the customer suddenly becomes so strict and they're like, no, it's not possible. You can't process our data in UAE. You have to process it within Saudi. So, challenges like this do also come up where customer or the data subjects stand is the primary stand, and you might have to change
Yes.
your policies, your compliance structures around the customer. I mean, we had
Yes.
almost everything in place, but we had to change everything in minute because the hospitals were not ready to allow us to process in UAE. And in fact, we even have technical challenges processing in Saudi because Saudi till date doesn't have like very leading cloud providers. They have very regional, soft, smaller cloud service providers. So we wanted to host on some leading cloud, and therefore we chose UAE. But geopolitical understanding, there's always an
Mm-hmm.
ongoing competition between Saudi and
Yes.
UAE, and the customers stand. We had to restructure the whole thing as per the KSA law, though already. But then again, we had to keep in the element of ensuring residency within KSA. So these factors
Hmm.
also, or these challenges also sometimes comes your way, wherein you might have complied, or what you're doing as per the book will be different on what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, so sometimes the customer requirement become more stringent than the regulation in the country.
Yeah, it
So
does, it
customer
does.
ultimately become the king or the queen, right? So decide how do they want to navigate. Interesting, interesting. Okay,
Akansha, I'm sorry to
Sandesh.
interrupt. There's just one question specifically for you, that how did you process the data outside KSA then?
We were compliant. We were allowed to process it, meaning as per the KSA law. So there is Article 29 of the Saudi PDPL, which states certain provisions which allow you to take the data cross border, subject to certain conditions being met, and certain privacy enhancing techniques being used, which was the plan, which was the initial plan to do it by the book like that. However, when our customers resisted, then we had to restructure the whole thing to be, as per the customer's requirement and at a cloud resident in Saudi. I hope that would answer the question.
Okay, great. So moving on to my next question, and my next question is for you, Sandesh, because part of the global DPO of Wipro, which is, I mean, thousands of customers and presence in so many countries and different variety of customer from a different domain, all sectors. So tell me, how do you, have your global data protection strategy? How do you really comply with those 100 plus laws that exist? And each of your customer would have a, somebody in Japan, somebody in Thailand, somebody in Sri Lanka, right? How do you make your privacy program as a global compliant program? So maybe this is will help our audience that how do we build a global privacy program?
Yeah, so there are country-specific laws which we need to abide, and these are not only privacy laws. There are data security laws as well. For example, in China, you cannot BYOK, you cannot bring your own key there in their data
Mm-hmm.
centers. Like, whenever you are keeping the data in China data center, they are the one who carries out this key. Apart from that, there are telco laws also. There are telecommunication laws where, like, for example, if you are running any BPO, KPO, or LPO kind of centers, then
Mm-hmm.
there are data localizations rules also comes in picture. Then not only data
Yes.
privacy law will come, but data localization and telecom regulatory authorities of those respective countries, those also will come in picture. So there cannot be one global privacy program. There has to be
Mm.
geo-specific privacy program. If we are working with the
Okay.
countries like Australia, there are state-specific programs.
Absolutely.
Like for Victoria's state, there is a different program. For New South Wales, there is a different program. Akansha has mentioned about UAE, the GCC. So there are different laws in Dubai. There are different laws in Abu Dhabi. For KSA, there are different laws. So as per the law of the land, we do that. And apart from the data privacy law, we have to abide by the data securities law as well as the telecom law, labor commissioner laws. There are some compliance, additional compliance, something called as HIPAA compliance. Like one of the customer with whom we are dealing, we have to transfer of the PHI data of customer as well as our employees' PHI data will also go there. So there are some
So
health related laws.
how do you do it? I mean, you have a one harmonized framework, or you have a country-wise privacy frame, for UAE, for example, there's another set of program and a guidelines. So how do you do it?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a country specific. It's a geo specific,
Okay.
and then it's a country specific. So previously it was a
Okay.
EU specific. Then Ireland had its own law. UK had
Yeah.
its own law. Then, like, we have to cut down that geo, those specific countries from those geos. We had for entire
Okay.
GCC there was one law. Then KSA has come up with this law with its own law. Then we have to cut up the KSA from rest of the GCC. So there are multiple frameworks, but all these frameworks has having some delta change. Like, there are few
Yes.
principles of privacy, like,
Mm-hmm.
retention, consent management, the segregation of data, applying the privacy by design. These are underlying principles. Over and above
Mm-hmm.
that there is some delta get changed. The 20 to 30% there is a difference, which we abide by putting the country specific law. But if any new customer is coming or any new business vendor is coming, then there is some, like, we do have our common program which take care of 70% of the law. Like,
Okay.
if you are compliant with the US, China, and Europe, you would be compliant with almost 80% of the all the laws of whichever law are enacted globally. And there are 20% changes and additional data which you can do as
Mm-hmm.
a country specific.
Okay. Okay. So it's a mix of a global versus local approach that I understand, that you may have a harmonized framework which will probably cover your 70 to 80% of the privacy principle based requirement,
Right.
and then maybe 20 to 30% will be delta. Okay, some countries want some DPIA, some country wants some certain approval, so that is taken up at that level. But you can
Correct.
still globalize a lot of those privacy practices and principle to some extent,
Right.
right? And then you can have a maybe more sectoral or local laws compliance requirements. Okay.
Right.
Akanksha and
Absolutely.
Priya, anything you are doing differently than Sandesh, which you would like to share with our
No, no.
participants?
Absolutely same. I think the thought process is it's
Yeah.
centralized with a central team and
Yes.
then localized. That's how it should be, and that's how it's derived at every area. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's great. That's great.
Yeah,
Uh,
more or less
okay.
the same.
Yes, Akanksha.
More or less the same with me as
Mm-hmm.
well. But however, what we try to do at my organization is take the approach of trying to implement the strictest law, probably GDPR, and force that across the organization. We are small right now, so we can afford to do it. And then maybe, get into jurisdiction or the geo specific requirements, because once you comply with GDPR, then you're mostly covered at all levels. And then you can get into the minute details of, complying with any particular jurisdictional
Agree.
requirements.
Agree. And I
And then
think
one question, Akanksha. I mean, you say you follow the strictest of the regulation, right? Which GDPR become the gold standard. So I mean, hypothetically, if there's a one processing for India as well as for EU, so you in India also you will apply principles and policies which are equivalent to GDPR, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. Okay, yeah, this is also one approach, that you choose the strictest one or you do local. I mean, okay, if there's certain things that you can freely do in India, probably why don't business do that? Because business probably would like to do that to for their business, right? That's not
Correct.
always
I mean,
easy that
this
you can
is the
stop
most
business.
difficult part. If you have to
Most
follow this
difficult part. I
approach,
mean,
then
yes,
convincing business is the most
business is the
difficult
most
part.
difficult part.
Rest
Yes,
of
yes,
it
yes.
is manageable.
Yes. I mean, marketing, there are a lot of marketing rules in EU specifically, right? And probably US and India is an easy market, right? So if you ask your sales and marketing team not to do this because they say, oh, this we can't do this in EU, but in India we can do this. So it becomes really very difficult to go to business, because business ultimately look for business, right? They want to increase their revenue. Um, but that's the probably the
That's true.
easiest
But
and the
then
best thing to do.
sometimes, Niru, what becomes helpful is that you try to enforce GDPR, and then when business comes to you, say, okay, this is technically now not allowed, but for business purposes, I am putting a disclaimer here, and you should
Hmm.
probably try and comply with this sooner. And this is a
Yes.
business decision. right?
Yes,
This is not a
yes,
DPO decision, not a privacy person's decision, but a business
yes,
decision to go by this aspect
yes.
and take the associated attached risk with it. So
I
that sort of
agree,
helps.
Akaksha, because our own strategy internally in my own company is first is being a business enabler, right? That
Yeah.
you are part of the business, right? You are not a privacy lawyer and activist, so you need to understand what a business need is, right? And how can you help business manage those challenges and complexity of regulations, right? And make it easy for them to do a business, right? So very rightly said, Akanksha. So we have to go by the business. We have to find a middle path which helps meet the privacy requirement as well as meets the business goals as well, and be a enabler there, right? So very well said. Okay, interesting conversation. Priyal, maybe as a time check, how much time do we have? Can we take one more question?
Yeah, we have around 15 minutes. So one more question. I think there are a couple in the chat if you wanna
Okay.
also look into that.
Okay, so maybe we can take one more question. I mean, more of a, not really a question. I mean, maybe a free flow discussion. It's like, how do you, as a DPO, as being a DPO of a global company comes with a huge responsibility. But how do you keep yourself up to speed with what is happening in the world, right? There's so much happening. So, how do you keep yourself abreast with the new technology, and how do you pick those knowledge and bring this into your organization as a policy and a framework? So, some insight on that.
I think it's a everyday learning. Some is what you proactively pick up, that is going to come. For example, when Gen AI came, we knew when customers started asking about certain aspects of privacy, compliance, security, responsible AI, they named it, etc. Some is you're not prepared and you don't know it's going to come, but it comes. For example, I'm just giving example. Sandesh talked about China. If anybody is really starting business in China and they have to kind of align their SaaS product there, you may have read so many things, but there is so much underlying understanding of it that even if you understand law, you understand compliance, still there may be a different context or meaning to anything. So one is understanding the law and just reading through it. So what I see is from two perspectives. One is proactively looking at different websites, newsletters that come through LinkedIn or etc. Keep reading on that. That yes, that helps to correlate, and you're better equipped to know what is latest. One is that. But second, nobody can prepare you for that. The moment it comes, that is where you start R&D, understanding different channels to it. And in case after a certain time you think, okay, I have done my best, still I need some SME, then it's like going to for example, for China, I did my best, but still I was like, no, let's take somebody as a understanding from actual China who will help us with kind of verifying that our understanding is correct. So no one clear answer to it, but my recommendation in today's world where technology, process aspects of it, cultural aspects are also changing every day. To be very honest, the 10-year-old batch that we have has a really different cultural aspect that what we see in the new lot. So let's keep it's very important to be updated about that. Not only the technology aspect, the cultural aspect, understanding what the new culture is getting in, and will whatever we had kind of created as a awareness aspect for 10-year-old, will that work for a 1-year-old experience? We have to keep on evaluating on that. So focus on technology process, but also focus on cultural aspect, because that also changes and evolves. You need to keep on reading. So the role is holistic in nature. You have to look at all the 4 aspects, that is process, technology, people, and cultural aspect. That I'll just here.
Yes. Very well said, Priya. So I think all these 4 pillars are important for us to learn and bring it back to the organization and fill in the gap. Maybe one last question. One advice for upcoming DPOs that you would have before we move to the question and answer. So maybe one.
Sorry, Neeru, I
advice.
missed. Can you just repeat that? I'm so sorry. Yeah.
My question is maybe one advice to the upcoming DPOs who would like to have.
I think Sandesh, Akanksha, you want to take it up?
Sure.
Yeah, the advice. Yeah, Akanksha, go ahead.
Okay. So the only advice I would say is, always try to be updated, being part of communities like DPO or, different groups. Maybe there will be group of, young new privacy professionals coming in, or groups on college levels where people will now take up privacy, as a specialization, etc. Being linked to the people who you pursue courses like CISP or CIPM, etc. with is a very important aspect which should not be ignored, because as a niche this area is continuously growing. So you have to really focus on being updated and upskilled always. It will not be like that, today I know DPDP and I am done with the privacy aspect. I'm working for an Indian company. To grow continuously in this area, you have to be always, versed with laws across or frameworks across, and gain as much as by meeting people, and the other factors that Priya also covered, the cultural aspects and all of it is really very important. Apart from that, it is also very important, to as a DPO to enforce yet take care of the business, right? Because we are somewhat compliance people, but at the same time, we have to be business enablers, and we need to always find better ways to support business while ensuring compliance at the same time. So, yeah, I think I would stick to these two aspects. Sandesh, please feel free to add.
Yeah, so very well covered by Priya and Akanksha. The cultural aspect is very well, like whenever you are dealing with any specific culture, then you should know that it's our duty to inform them without hurting their sentiments or without affecting the business. Like, if you go too harsh on them, your business might be get impacted. At the same time, you have to give them confidence that it is our collective responsibility to abide to
Yes.
compliance of like country compliance, and not only that, to respect individuals' privacy. Like I will tell you one of
Yes.
the customer with whom I was interacting. It was an Indian company, and he was saying now new DPDP rules are coming, and I have given around 25 to 30 suggestions. I said, okay, now what next? Now he's saying next is like like we were negotiating on how we our company shouldn't give PI data to them, our employees' PI data. So he's saying the rules are still at the draft stage, like why you're asking. Then I have given him an example, like, rules are in the draft stage, but DPDP Act is in place. And that act is in place to protect your and my privacy. Okay. So collectively, we should work towards this. It's not like some policeman or some regulatory has to come and like, take his
Completely
stick
agree,
and like,
Sandesh. Yeah.
impose on us. Yeah.
Yes.
It shouldn't make a compulsion.
Yeah, they should
So we
see
need
you as a
to
friend in
let them
the
know.
company, not as a policeman. So I think that's very well
Yeah,
said. I mean, otherwise people
exactly.
will
Ah,
not
yeah,
come
yeah,
to you with their problem. They are starting some new processing. They are onboarding a new vendor. So they should see that there is a value. They
exactly,
come to you. You don't say no, 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 no. You can't do this. You
exactly,
can't do this. You are helping them. Okay, there's a better way of doing it, and you are helping them. You are being on
exactly,
their side, helping them do the business in the best possible way. So I,
exactly.
I I think I think what Akanksha mentioned, networking is the main important thing. I think you need
Yeah,
to
and
come close to those people who are already doing it. And I think my one advice probably is there are a lot of trackers that are available which are tracking what kind of fines are happening, privacy fines are happening. Go through what is happening. Probably this will give you the real implication that if you don't do something, what can go wrong, right? Because otherwise, if you're just reading the laws, you're not seeing the what are the complication and the challenges, right? So please go through, subscribes, and go to those GDPR.tracker or something. There are a lot of other trackers also, not really prescribing anything here.
yeah,
Go to those fines that are happening. Go through a lot of these rulings which are coming up. It will give you a lot of insight that how to interpret a law and what it means, right? So sorry, please,
yeah, yeah.
please go
No,
on.
no, 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 perfectly fine. That is exactly wanted to cover. I think you already touched base on that. So the idea is it as a role of DPO, it doesn't matter how you are entering a room, but the expectation is how you're going out of a room and what kind of impact you are making. So as you rightly
Absolutely.
highlighted, if you are just talking about law, you're talking about protection aspects of it, that is all subjective. In order, the people who are sitting in front of you are from business. They are from different aspects of business mostly, because legal and you already collaborate. Legal and DPO, they collaborate, they understand each other's language. But when you enter into a room, it doesn't matter you're a legal, as a DPO, when you enter and when you are talking to management, and you have to talk to management, you have to talk their language. And when you're talking about that, you can't just talk subjective and legal and protection languages and technology languages. It has to be very layman where they understand it. And as Neeru added, you have to kind of add to the use cases that if we do this, such kind of implications can happen. They may not be able to correlate, and your job is to help them correlate it with some example. That's why learning, understanding what helped, what kind of a breaches can happen. Else you can say breach will happen. They will say how. What can you help us with? If you don't have right answer, it will not make an impact. So how you entered a room, you will go similarly like that. But what changes for a DPO is how you entered that room and what impact you made in there, with the balance of how you are communicating things with respect to technology, talking about process, not overwhelming them. At the same time, making an impact, making them understand and coming out as a winner from that room. That is the idea for this role of DPO. That is where you have to get yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. Yeah. Okay, so very interesting conversation. But there are some questions also. Probably I'll start with the latest question first. So I see a question from a law student. They wanted to know how do they start their skill and experience in this. I think we have spoken about it. Certifications are important, but I think keep yourself up to date. What is happening latest in the world? Keep track of use cases, scenarios more and more. Join some forums so that you know what is happening latest is important. I think the previous question has been on the tools. So I mean that's a very common question that we come across. Anybody would like to answer anything? What kind of tool is recommended for DPO? Anybody want to comment on this question?
I think we have in market, we have a lot of tools, and we can share that list also. You can Google also that. But end of the day, it will not be wise to say, because every organization, we agree or disagree, everything can't be tailor fit. We still need that kind of a customization to meet our requirements. So end of the day, in case you want to understand about the tools, you have to do a bit of R&D, understand what fits to your organization, and call them for demo. Because what you read through and when you understand, these are two different aspects. And I can by experience tell you, we talked to so many folks, but it didn't work out. In terms of what our expectation was, they were talking generic stuff. We wanted specific. So my recommendation is, there are a lot of tools online available. You can just read through it, see what is best fit for your organization, and ask for demo. Look at the demo, and then you will understand, is it applicable to your or it is not.
So start playing more active role. Go to internet. ChatGPT is available. Look for demos, YouTube videos. So probably you will gather what kind of a tool you are looking for. Not one tool can solve all your problem. Go what is your organization need. Examine that. Take demos. That's what Priya is saying. Another question that I see here, the breaches are happening every now and then. What is the role of a DPO? Is DPO responsible for breaches, and how DPO should handle these breaches? So, who would like to take up this question?
Yeah, data breach management is a responsibility of DPO, and privacy incident management, like however incident are getting managed, that is also a part of DPO's role. And how do we manage it? Like we should have the technical background. There will be already knock and SOC in place. So apart from knock and SOC, we can integrate our privacy management tools with these SOCs and knocks. Where any privacy breach is happening, then you will come to know if any incident has come up. From your SIEM tool, you will get a notification that some kind of breach has happened. And then if you do a RC of it, you would know what that caused. Was it a security incident or if it's a privacy incident? Now, once you know the incident, to whom you should inform, to regulatory authorities, to certain. So there are various regulatory framework. Now, after our DPDP, you need to inform our India's Data Privacy Board also. So it's a responsibility of the DPO, and it's like working very closely with CRO, with Chief Risk Officer, as well as Chief Information and Security Officer. With these people, you are working very closely, and to remediate the risk, you are also working very closely with CIO and CTO functions.
Okay, thanks, Sandesh. There's another question, very common question that we see all our days in life. Certification, right? So somebody is asking, one is asking, shall we do certification like CIPP for a DPO role, or can we enter privacy domain without any certification?
I would suggest the good start is CIPP/CN. It's a new certification. Previously, it used to be CIPP/E for European. They used to teach some GDPR principles. But I would suggest that they have come up with China's PIPL Act, because with this China's law, they also teach you DSL and CSL. So that covers the data security laws as well. For example, in India, how do we have Information Technology Act? So similar way, apart from data privacy law, they are also going to teach you the data securities law. The CIPP/CN syllabus has it. European laws are newly come up with a Data Solidarity Act, but it's not a part of CIPP syllabus. So in Europe also the standards are coming up, but these are new standards like DORA Act, Cyber Resiliency Act, EU Cyber Solidarity Act. But those they are not teaching in as a part of CIPP/E certification. So you should go to CIPP/CN certification. Then you go for ISO 27001 apart, and if you can integrate that with ISO 27018 and ISO 27701, which is a PIMS framework, that will be good. And like if you want to work for any ISP or any technical company, then I would suggest do some basic networking and CEH course also.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with Sandesh. I just have a quick point here. One, I think Sandesh listed all the valid, but it also depends the experience you are in it. If you're a very starter level, first have the basic understanding what privacy is about. You can start with GDPR basic 7 principle, but it's not just understanding the English around it. It's like thorough understanding of same, and then step by step going to the next stages. If you have to be a privacy professional, certifications do help, but they help to the professionals who already know the basic and they are already at a level. So when you look for a certification, do think what kind of a experience level you are at, and then based on that, choose that. Basic,
So
go with the
basically,
basic.
prioritize knowledge over certification, right? So
Absolutely,
if you already
absolutely.
have a knowledge, you can go and do the certification to see, okay,
Value added.
you know these framework and this is what you already know, right?
Absolutely,
Rather than you
absolutely.
go the certification and then you see how do I apply this in a real life
It
scenario.
doesn't
So
work.
go
It honestly
after
doesn't work.
knowledge and
Yeah.
then follow the certification, not
Absolutely.
just the certification another way, right?
Absolutely.
So bang
And I
on. So
think
thank you.
starting
Yes, please tell
point
me,
can be,
Akansha.
these courses on Udemy or other platforms where you get
Yes.
a crash course in GDPR or
Absolutely.
maybe DPDP and
Yes.
stuff like that. So maybe starting from there to, what all Sandesh recommended.
Yeah. I know, if you want to have a knowledge, you can seek knowledge all around. But if you want a stamp on your resume, and then you have to shell out a lot of money for this CIPP, and a lot of
You
effort
need to
goes
have
into that.
experience. If 1 year
That's
old
correct.
goes and says, "See, I am CI," he will be grilled at a very different level. So what I'm
Yes.
trying to say is, what is expectation in for example, C-related certifications, or CIPM, and all those, they need certain level of experience to understand those scenarios. So that's what I'm saying. It depends on the experience you are in. Yeah.
Yes. So I think we are we are not able to take all the questions there, Priyal, but we are already over the time. So maybe the panel can answer the question later, and maybe you can reach out to the panelist on LinkedIn through for your questions. Priyal, over to you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it was very insightful and rightly said, Neeru ma'am, that definitely if anybody has question, because of time crunch, we could only address some of them. Please feel free to connect with us and we'll be happy to redirect you to our esteemed panelists here and looking forward to hearing from everybody. And I would take a moment to thank Neeru ma'am here, Priya, Sandesh sir, Akansha so much for this insightful session. And I'm sure this covered a lot of questions. This did give insight to people on how exactly to step up into the role of a DPO. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for all the attendees also to participate in this webinar. And we look forward to your participation ahead. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
thanks everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Thank you.
everyone.
everyone.